Abby. I'm the author of the young adult fantasy novel, The Power of Shadows, and today we're going to be talking all about author branding. If you're anything like me, you've heard so many people say that you need to establish an author brand. You need to have a social media presence, even before you query literary agents if you're going to go traditional or publish your first book as an indie author, but they don't talk about the nuts and bolts of really how to do that, and so you're just kind of left in this limbo thinking, oh, I need to post every single day, I need people to know who I am, but you don't really know how to do that, and I don't really know how to do that. Even the other day, I was in a bookstore browsing books in the writers section, one of my favorites, and I was looking at a book on the business of being an author. It had a section on author marketing, author branding, and TikTok, but I found that the tips were a little bit vague and not super helpful. So in this video, I'm going to go through marketing book types, so all of the different kind of types of author branding you can do based on this book called Fascinate, Making Your Brand Irresistible. And this book is generally for businesses and or general marketing, but I think a lot of those concepts apply. I've never considered myself to be great at marketing or know how to do it literally at all, so I found reading this book super helpful, and I'm going to distill kind of the key types and explain what they are so that you can hopefully take something away from it. Then I'm going to research some people that I really admire on TikTok, some authors that I think have established themselves well and have a really good brand, and some of them have even gotten six-figure book deals out of their branding on TikTok. And then I'm going to plan my marketing strategy and kind of go through every single step that I'm going to do and what the strategies I'm going to try. And then finally, I'm going to say kind of where I am today and then update it with where I hope to be. That was a lot. Now, going back to this book, Fascinate, How to Make Your Brand Impossible to Resist. She outlines 7 key different types of branding that you can have. One is innovate. Well, I'll start off with all of them, but it's innovation, passion, power, prestige, trust, and mystique and alert. And so each one of these kind of has a different key philosophy and different vibe that the end person you're selling to, or in this case readers, will get from all of your author content. So innovation is you're doing things that are different than everybody else in the industry. Maybe you're funny and quippy and have a little bit more of a wry tone to all of your content. Passion is you're really connecting to people's hearts. Maybe you have a lot of really heartfelt scenes and you're talking about characters and it's really cozy and you're trying to connect with the key core emotional instincts of the reader. Power is you're clear and you're establishing yourself as a source of truth or as somebody who really knows what they're talking about in the industry. Prestige is pretty much what it sounds like. You know, you have all of the banners of the New York Times bestselling. Maybe you show yourself in front of a New York Times Square kind of giant billboard, or anything USA Today bestseller. All of those things that say, okay, pay attention to me because everybody's paying attention to me. Trust is building up a consistent brand. So with other brands, this might look like, making sure that they have a consistent experience, and that's one of the things you really prioritize and one of the key values that you have and that you promise to your end consumer. And for authors, this could be kind of different things. One of it might be if you're thinking of an author that every single time you pick up one of their books, it's a consistent experience and you know what you're going to get out of it, and so they build up trust that way. For author marketing, it could be more like, oh, okay, whenever I come to their video, I know that it's going to be this, and they're consistent, and I know what I'm getting out of it. Mystique is kind of the, they're hold you at arm's length, and you don't really know. One example I can think of this is Donna Tartt. It's not super applicable to this video, I think, because I'm talking about social media marketing for authors, and so it's all about kind of getting your presence out there and known. But you can kind of tease things and say, oh, here's the project name, and I'm not going to reveal the details, or use elements of mystique. And then alert is the final one, and it's adding kind of like a time-sensitive component or anything that makes people not scared, but be like, have some sort of pressure or need to go. I think in the book she uses a lot of examples of like insurance companies or other things that might force you to act quickly or say, okay, you really need to do this. Another one of the really good bits of information in this book is to figure out what your adjective for best is and what you do differently. So the example she gave is for Southwest. What they do best is practicality, and what they do differently is that they're friendly. So they would be friendly practicality, and then they can use that to really kind of be the North Star for all of their marketing efforts. So when I go through all of the different authors that I looked at for their marketing social media presences, I tried to identify some of those words as an exercise to try and figure out what mine would be. Get into the specific authors I looked at and the takeaways and words identified for them. I'm also going to have a few key takeaways at the end, kind of overall patterns that I noticed and tips that I got from looking at a bunch of these with kind of a critical eye. And if you want to do this yourself, I really highly recommend it. I tried to put on a different hat when I was scrolling, where instead of just kind of mindlessly going through, if you ever see book talk content or author content and you want to scroll away immediately, stop yourself and think, okay, what about that video made me want to scroll away? Or if there's a book that's you're particularly interested in and it makes you want to save the post and maybe add it to your TBR, think to yourself, what intrigued me about this and what was particularly compelling. That practice, I think, is kind of helping me build up a skill set and a list of post ideas. So without further ado, let's get into the different authors. So the first author I looked at, and arguably one of the best to do it, is Alex Aster. She has 1.4 million TikTok followers, and she even got her book deal off of a TikTok she posted originally describing Light Lark, which is a young adult fantasy novel. Whether or not you like her books or any of the authors on this list, really, she is very talented at what she does in building a following and getting people interested in the book and then having that convert directly to book sales. So I identified her words as passion and prestige. Prestige, especially recently, because she uses a lot of videos such as I'm going into the bookstore and signing my books, or look, I have a billboard in New York Times Square, or I never thought I'd get here. But then there's a passion angle to it where she always connects it back to where she came from and how long it took her. She started writing when she was 12 and she was querying literary agents for so many years, and she even had a middle grade series. And she kind of grounds it in all of the struggle that she had leading up to the success. So it's prestige, but it's maybe not too affronting to her audience. She posts every single day, almost without fail. She does trends, she does little snippets of her book, snippets of things that inspire her. So if she was at a concert and there's a lyric that inspired part of her book, she'll film that and just add a little caption. And they're not super intensive, but it's really consistent and kind of goes across the board. And something else I noticed is that sometimes I have had in the back of my mind, like, oh, I don't want to flood people, like, you know, people's time is valuable, but she'll post 3 versions of the trend almost in a row with just slight variations to see kind of whether one will do better than the other. And it's important that TikTok's algorithm is a little different than YouTube or other platforms that you might be on, or Instagram, although Instagram's also probably more like this now, where people aren't going to see every single post you have, even if they follow you. So it's probably okay to do things like variations and just keep trying and trying and trying. Didn't do both best and different words for everyone, but I think what she does best is consistency. She does that better than almost anyone I've seen before, and consistency and trying new things. So she is always looking for the different trends in book talk and really keeping up to date with whatever's new. The author on this list, and actually she hasn't even put out her first book, but it's Audra Winter, and she is the creator of the world of Guardian, which I can say almost from memory because she starts out every single one of her TikToks that way. Words I identified for her are trust and innovation. Trust because she posts really consistently. Like I said, she has that intro that I can recite almost word for word, and so every video is pretty consistent. And she also has a lot of transparency into the process. So innovation because she has a bunch of different artists on her team. She has like an indie house of artists that are designing art for this world of Guardian that she's building up. And then what she does different is that she's very world first. So she talks about the world of Guardian, and then the first book in that series is almost secondary to the promotion of the world itself. And she's very much about building up the world and saying there's going to be lots of books in it, almost Brandon Sanderson-like. And the kind of videos she posts are a lot of sit-down talking videos, talking about her team of artists, showing the art, talking about her journey and her publishing and all of that. But it's pretty much always centered around that world. Wild success so far, almost like some of the best numbers that people have ever seen in pre-sales for her book, just from kind of this TikTok marketing strategy and talking about the world. I'll touch on this one briefly, but Victoria Aveyard, hers is probably not going to be accessible for most of us, so I'll just go really quickly. But her words are probably more power and trust. So power. She speaks very confidently, and she has a transparency into the publishing industry that most of us don't have access to. Trust, because she shows that transparency and comments and seems to speak out on things that other people might not be willing to, and give people that really like kind of inside look that makes them want to follow her and continue to listen to her different takes on things. And then she posts trends too, kind of like everybody else, and topical things and longer chats. But again, her kind of persona is probably not accessible to most of us because she's been in the industry for so long, and she has a wildly successful young adult fantasy series that I read when I was in high school, middle school. So that one is probably not super accessible, but is an example of kind of power and trust and how somebody might do that as an author. Maybe a little bit smaller, Katie Wu. She is amazing. I love her TikToks, and she's just like the sweetest person. Her first novel is actually not even out yet, but she has done a fantastic job at growing her audience and building a sense of community among her TikTok. I think her primary word is power, so unlike some of the people who might be a little bit more cozy, another cozy example is Christiane Jones, who's a YouTuber. Mostly I was doing TikTokers for this, but she kind of like has a very cozy vibe and brings people along, but Katie is much more about dissecting and analyzing different writing samples, and really showing kind of her expertise and looking at writing, at dissecting prose and what's done well, and it really shows, and I think builds a sense of trust with all of the different people in her audience that, she really knows what she's talking about, and I'm pretty confident that, all of her writing's going to be really good based on what she's talked about on TikTok. My plan with where I am now with my social media marketing, as well as kind of the words I identified for myself and what I'm going to do with strategies to get to where I want to be. Words I identified for myself were passion and innovation. Passion because I like kind of having a talky, warm, general vibe. I want people to feel cozy. I want them to feel welcome and to have a really good community where people feel like they can kind of come, and all my books are pretty character focused, and I want people to feel warm, so I think that fits. I think also another thing I was going to mention is when creating content, I think it's important to think about who your target audience is, and I know that's super overused, but I've just recently kind of internalized this, the difference between targeting writers in your content versus targeting readers. There's been a lot of TikToks I've made that I thought were pretty funny and relatable, but they were funny and relatable for writers and the writer experience, which, to be fair, there is a big intersection, but not necessarily targeting the end consumer, people who are going to buy my books, which is readers. So I'm going to start focusing on reader-focused content. Other things that I noted down for myself, or things I'm going to focus on, a lot of people talk about showing your personality, of course. So I try to think about what parts of my personality would be most compelling and in particular would be relevant to my books. I really want to get better at talking to my phone as a camera. I'm also not super comfortable talking to a camera as a camera yet, but I want to be able to like open up more and show myself. In my personal life, I have kind of like a contagious excitement. I get, very excited about things, and it kind of seeps into my friends' lives as I tell them about that, so I'd like that to come across more in my content. Again, I'd like to be more bubbly. I want to show kind of like my character first / like how much I enjoy the relationships in my books and how I really want to like take people on that journey. And then another word I just put is colorful, because I like having like lots of rainbow aesthetic stuff, so hopefully I can somehow incorporate that into part of my personal brand. Today on TikTok, I have about 11,000 followers. That's been higher before. I was really consistent with TikTok a few years ago when I had originally started writing The Power of Shadows. That was about 3 years ago now, and that was pretty disconnected from when I actually published it. So I had written it and was talking about it, and I think I did a pretty decent job about marketing it as I was writing it. But then I had a long time in the query trenches, and then before eventually deciding to indie publish, and so I kind of dropped the ball on that and let it go stale. And then in the years since, I've been super inconsistent. So that's kind of all from a before time. Now, what are my strategies going forward? Oh, and I also forgot to mention, I watched another video about this author who has a lot of success marketing her books on TikTok, doesn't do any paid ads or anything, and she has multiple TikTok accounts. So I also started another kind of like TikTok account just to play around with it, that just a few days ago I really recently started, that can do more faceless formats and just like quotes and things and continue marketing, especially the Power Shadows. Also, right after I published this, I got a concussion, and so I never did a big marketing push, and that was another thing that kind of slowed it down. And so I want to get back into both marketing that one, especially as I write the second one. When that one comes out, I think I can do a big marketing push for this one. And then the new book that is with beta readers now, my dark academia fantasy romance, that hopefully I can figure out how to get the momentum rolling much better with that one, and then not stop, and then keep it going. One, I built up a really good habit of writing every day. I did that in this challenge that for my Dark Academia book, where I wanted to finish it just like with a beta reader ready draft in 30 days. That's what that calendar is still up there for. And if you're interested in hearing more about that and how I actually kind of managed to do it, I filmed the entire journey, so I have that up there. But I got a little Tamagotchi app as part of that, where I just check off every single day if I write a little bit, and that's been like the most transformative habit tracking / productivity strategy I've ever implemented, because I have a 48-day streak where I've written at least a little bit every single day, and so I want to try doing that for my marketing as well for TikTok, because I think that will really help, and I know consistency matters so much on TikTok. Then I'm also going to continue doing kind of trends videos. I have done a lot of trends videos in the past, and I have shied away from any kind of like talking videos. I feel like I'm not as good at them and they don't perform as well, but I want to try and do a much better mix. So when I sit down to write, I want to do a talking video, something about the writing, about that day, but I also want to keep up with the trends videos because I know that helps too. So those are kind of my 3 things I'm going to do when I sit down to write. I'm going to make a TikTok, TikTok. I'm going to continue making trends videos, and then I'm going to have a new hobby where I have to post TikTok at least every day. And I'm going to try and use this new central branding that I've established for myself as my guiding light. So whenever I sit down to make something, I can think about the target audience and then also the kind of persona that I want to have consistent across all of my marketing. Who knows if this will work? I will update with new numbers and film all of the journey here on YouTube to see kind of what works and what doesn't, and hopefully fall into some of the pitfalls before you do, so you don't have to make any of the same mistakes as me. And if you found anything in this video useful, please subscribe, and if you would be interested in anything I write, which I didn't really talk about it today, but I have my Substack down below. You can get my author updates. I will see you in the next one. Bye!